Well, thank you first for your question. I think it has come with the evolution, technological evolution, and the normal economic downtrend that has affected all domains of life, and particularly the cultural sector.
Okay.
Now, if you're talking about the shutdown of cinema halls, I think we can trace that to the normal economic downturn of events, and then the fact that for some reasons the existing cinema halls could not at the time meet the operators could not meet the cost of running those cinema halls. And normally when there are business people, the moment they can't break even, the moment they can't have a profit margin that would be sustainable, that enables them to sustain the business floating, and then also enable them to live from the daily exigencies, to cover the daily exigencies that they have in their both household and professionally, then they have to shut down. So reasons behind this is clearly understood. It was basically economic, and also now there's a technological evolution. With the advent of cable television, now a lot of people had an option and would rather consume films at home, would rather sit behind their television sets than go to cinema halls. But this is a culture that is beginning to change with time.
Okay. What became of the government subventions to these private cinema owners? Government used to subvent the activities before. What happened?
It's the same question you asked. The government used to subvent even film production. Okay. Now, subventions can only be sustainable when operators, economic operators, are honest in their deals and when the sector is sustainable. You can't sustain subventions when the domain is not sustainable. Now, with regards to, if we were to take a walk down memory lane, you realize that the government has put in place different strategies to assist, to enable the cinema sector to float. But at every level, the effort of government is either being abused or is not being effectively having the results expected. Okay. I take the example of FODIC. This is a structure that government put in place to enable cinema operators have a base from which to go. Yeah. Government did not intend to be the sole sponsor of cinema operations. Now, what did the experience give? We have records of adventurous cinema operators who come in, submit requests for funds to do films, and then they have that money and they do everything else apart from cinema productions. There is evidence of even the stock of equipment that was purchased for the purpose. Progressively, it's been depleted. So that fund could not survive a certain period. Then government, after a number of years, replaced that with the content affectation spéciale, which was meant to sustain cultural promotion, to sustain artistic production. But I'm sure you must agree with me that whenever you give money to people, to artists, and you don't follow up the use, now there are chances that they would abuse, they would deviate from the main objectives. I have evidence of people who collected money from content affectation, and with the pledge to do productions, and then they ended up buying either applause or building or buying cars, and in the end, the product itself is not done. Now, from the statistics, ever since I took office, statistics show that for 17 years, that content affectation spéciale has been operational. The government disbursed 17 billion francs. The unfortunate thing or fortunate thing is that funding was not just for cinema, it was for cultural sector, which means Women Cultural Association, Mbod Cultural Students, Binka Cultural Students, everyone who had anything that had to do with culture could submit a request and ask for some subventions. Government was making this money available. Then the unfortunate thing is that can work with cultural associations and maybe spontaneous festivals that are organized. But for statutory productions like cinema and film production follows a certain methodology that once you abuse, then you would have repercussions. on either the level or I would say the status of the film, because you can't take film that is produced with substandards and then project them even on TV. Now what happened? Someone will submit a request for say 50 million to do a film. Now that money was not just for film production. So the commission that had to take a decision, they look at it and then they decide, okay, we have so far received 300 requests. Now this guy is asking for 50 million, they can give you 3, they can give you 4, they can give you 5.
Yeah, let's talk about that. They say the money is insufficient, most especially those who run cinema halls. They say what was given by government was very
I'm coming to cinema halls. Yeah. Now, filmmakers take the money and then they don't use it. Maybe because they have requested for 50 million and they are given 5 million. Clearly, there's a problem. Mm-hmm. But the intention, government did not set out to substitute funding. It was actually augmenting or to support and then perhaps enable them to accomplish. But then they thought that government was coming in as sole sponsors or the producers. No. Now, coming back to cinema operators, you see, I can understand with them that the moment subventions were curtailed because of dishonesty of cultural promoters, dishonesty of cultural investors. Now, they found out that the domain was no longer sustainable. And when the government had suspended the little support they were giving, then they could not stay in operation. That should have been expected. You can't continue to give support when you are not able to evaluate to see how the trickle-down effect, how it's impacting on the economy.
So what is the way forward now? What can be done to revamp cinema halls?
There is. You see, I want you to know the cause of the closure or the shutdown of cinema halls was not solely as a result of the curtail of subventions. Yeah. It was equally as a result of the technological evolution and the advent of cable television.
So it's irreversible now? No
it's not irreversible. Presently, but I want to tell you something. Nothing can effectively replace cinema halls, because cinema is a context, it's a social milieu, it's an environment where people do some kind of socialization. Now, it doesn't just suffice to have a film because you can watch your film on your handset, but that is not cinema, because there is some conviviality. That platform brings people together to share ideas, to commune. That's why you have seen people who leave their homes and then they go gather under a tree to watch football, because that space, that opportunity gives people, a moment of relaxation, and then they exchange and they share a lot of their, and then that's where you can also measure, and I would say cross-fertilization of ideas. Now, what the government can do, or what the government is doing, is statutory. A lot of less than 7 or 6 cinema halls are operational in Cameroon. Government gave them a certain motivation. I know about cinema halls, for example, that began in 2017. Mm-hmm. If I take the case of Canal Olympia, they started operation in 2017. Government gave them a tax holiday, a moratorium, where they operated for 2-3 years without paying anything. Mm-hmm. It's in 2022 that now they began to request for them to look at. Now, normally, this kind of opportunity, they give you this possibility that start your operations and then go on and let's see how sustainable it is. The normal procedure was for these same cinema operators to come back to us and say, okay, we have gone operational, it's 2-3 years now. This is where we are and this is what we can now pay. Behold, no one thing until we initiated movement, recovery in 2022. And then, to remind them of the basic text which says, there is an additional tax that is deducted as per ticket. This is an indication that because that sector is supposed to be productive, that sector is supposed to generate, it's also a niche, it's also a source of funding. And once they pay this money and we add together to what filmmakers pay in terms of request for shooting permit, for production permit, and for exploitation of their films, now we put this together and we give it back to filmmakers. The government gives it back to filmmakers in form of subventions. But when the basic procedures are not respected, and I'll tell you there's one more thing. For any subvention to work, government has a strategy of checking out on the trickle-down effect. First of all, you must be sure that there is statistical data that informs you about the outcome of the subventions you give. If you're giving subventions that can use somebody's pocket, then you can't. Now, we have noticed consistently there are a lot of filmmakers in Cameroon who have not declared and who are not ready to declare their income and are not ready to declare even their activities, so they are not registered in the database. Now, when we go through the neighborhoods, we find them operational. We simply ask to know for how long they have been in operation and say, okay, consider that the past 2, 3, 4 years you have operated. That's fine. Now, can we now legalize? Because for us, presently we are doing the mapping in terms of, we're trying to map out the specifically cinematographic domain to see how many stakeholders are effectively operational in this country. And how do you measure the impact, socio-politically speaking, or socio-logically speaking? How impactful is their activities on ground? I will tell you here, if you go to Boya, every month, I think that Boya churns out not less than 4 or 5 films every month. You go to Bameda, the same. Douala churns out more than between 7 and 10 films every month. Most of these studios that are producing films, they are not declared. They are not paying any taxes. Now, how do you expect government to continue to give subventions when the little percentages that they're supposed to pay, they're not coming? Now, back with the cinema halls. When this, like I said, when a few cinema halls operated, they were given enough time. Even now, we are looking at the basic tax because the tax gives them a percentage cut from every ticket. Yeah. Now, recently I had a meeting with cinema operators and we agreed to give them a flat rate of 10% of their income per ticket. That means if you sell a ticket for 1,000 francs, 10% of 1,000 francs, how much? It's 100 francs. Yeah. Is that too much to ask? The idea is to convince government that this sector is productive. You can't ask government, you can't ask the state to pump in money into a domain that is dead. You can't ask the state to pump in money into a domain that they can't measure the impact and how many people are recruited in there. I was very impressed the other day to find out somewhere in this post, someone has set up 20 studios and has recruited 40 Cameroonians. Now I will be able to stand by that kind of person and lobby that, okay, you know what, let their taxes be cut by half. All right, to allow them operate because you're seeing exactly how many Cameroonians are down. Now, if you look at those who are producing studios that are producing films, it's a sector that's generating a lot of money, but we don't have statistics. And it's only on the basis of statistics that now government can begin to reconsider. I am in the process of making in fact, the Minister of Arts and Culture has instructed us to come up with ideas that can enable government to measure the need and reason to put in place production money for filmmakers. Because Cameroonian films, since 2010, have been making, Cameroonians are having awards in national and international festivals around the world. That is an indication that the sector is booming. It's also an indication that Cameroonians have risen to a level where their films are also competitive in the international market. And so we can get that done.
What is the way forward for cinema, private cinema owners? What can be done?
Presently, we are actively concretizing efforts in what we have christened public-private partnership, where we'll be deploying a team to the different regions to identify potential investors in cinema, in cultural sector, and particularly in cinema. And our idea is to set up these cinema halls in different councils. The moment you set them in council now, we would identify private individuals, cultural investors who are ready to partner with the local councils. And of course, with the Ministry of Arts and Culture, they will set up this. Now you make the domain a little more sustainable. Okay. So, progressively, if by the time we concretize our efforts, all right, and identify people who are ready to go with the ministry and with the plans we would have at least 5 cinema halls in every region. And I'll give you an example. Recently, our statistics and our ground operation shows us that for the Southwest, A cinema hall will do very well in Boya. A cinema hall will do very well in Kumba. A cinema hall will do very well in Limbe. In Bamenda, there are 2 potential areas that can be very attractive and that can take 24/7. And this is even more interesting because if you look at the number of films that are being produced in this country, you will ask the question, where do Cameroonians consume their films? Where do they see their films? I agree with you, there are individuals that have initiated online platforms where you can consume, you can actually watch Cameroonian movies. But I tell you what, the moment you sit in your private room, we're reducing now a cinema. In fact, it destroys the whole gamut. In fact, what comes with cinema cannot be substituted by handset viewing of films because it's a whole platform, conviviality, vivid and sound, socialization. It's a moment where people meet to talk. We're looking for opportunities today in this country. The most propitious places where people meet every day will be bars and snacks. We want to substitute that. Even in churches, people don't go enough. You see people go to markets because they want to just go around and do eye shopping. We are saying, come back to cinema hall. So our idea is to source for potential investors in the cinema and then find means and ways of fine-tuning our strategies so that we set up cinema halls for our films, local productions, to be projected in those cinema halls.